It's time for Supply Chain Now Radio, broadcasting live from the supply chain capital of the country, Atlanta, Georgia. Supply Chain Now Radio spotlights the best in all things supply chain. The people, the technologies, the best practices, and the critical issues of the day. And now, here are your hosts.
All right, good morning. Scott Luton
Still,
with you,
right? Yeah.
Supply Chain Now. Welcome back to the show. So in today's show, we're not broadcasting live from Atlanta. We are in Las Vegas, Nevada at the Reverse Logistics Association Conference and Expo, which is the center of the universe, at least when it comes to returns and reverse logistics this week. We are interviewing a wide range of supply chain thought leaders, and we're going to continue that trend here today, right, Greg?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
well,
at the bit.
we keep talking about the value of personal interaction, right? We met Claudia in the elevator on the way down to the show floor.
And found that she's keynoting
yeah.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
And invited her right on. So before we get there, I want to tee everything up accurately because we've got a great guest for this episode. We should acknowledge our sponsors that make this programming.
Our neighbors and
That's
sponsors at Recommerce.
So today's episode is brought to you by Recommerce. The Recommerce Group Industries is an industry leader in return product management, return center services, remanufacturing, reprocessing, repairing, and recycling of consumer products. You can learn more at recommercegroupinc.com.
If you remember nothing else, remember Re.
They
do all the Re's.
That's right. Quick programming note, like all of our podcasts, you can find us on wherever you get your podcasts from, Apple Podcasts, Spotify.
YouTube.
Just make sure you subscribe so you don't miss anything. So, as if he needs an introduction, because he doesn't.
And won't wait for one.
My esteemed co-host, fearless co-host, Greg White, serial supply chain tech entrepreneur, chronic disruptor, and trusted advisor. Greg, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
The hits keep coming.
They do. I mean, it's energizing to be here, right, and to meet all these people who have such an incredible passion for something that's underrepresented, not well understood, but so impactful to the supply chain and the environment.
Agreed.
I mean, you don't think of instinctively, you don't think of reverse logistics as something that's impactful to the environment, but it is so very impactful to the environment, and I think this awareness is great for that.
Agreed. And we've been real fortunate with as we have been executing on our interview lineup. Every conversation, there's plenty of nuggets that our listeners, I think, are really going to appreciate. And we're going to continue that trend here today.
Yes.
Because I've already got a little sense in some of my first impression. We have just a little bit of passion here and lots of expertise. So with no further ado, let's introduce our guest, Claudia Freed, CEO of EALgreen. Claudia, good morning. How you doing?
Good morning, Scott, and thank you, Greg, very much for that circuitous appointment that we didn't make in the elevator. And I'll tell the story a little bit later if we have a moment about that very important meeting. So thank you for having me here.
You bet. Serendipity is a beautiful thing.
Yes, indeed.
All right, so let's dive into who Claudia is the person. Before we're talking about EALgreen and talk shop and whatnot, let's find out more about you, where you're from, and give us some anecdotes on your upbringing.
Sure. I was born and raised in Argentina, in a
beautiful
small
country.
town, and I happen to know that Greg has some connections to Argentina. I come from a town called Paraná in the province of Entre Rios, which means in between rivers. So I come from a part of Argentina that has agriculture, commerce, but more importantly, it's a hub for higher education. And so education has always been a very important part of my life. I was the daughter of an educator and a granddaughter of a school principal, so education was always very central to my life.
Do they administer corporal punishment in Argentina?
Not in the school that I went to, but I asked my other friends that went across town in schools that may have had that. But no, Argentina has made progress.
What does
Nobody does that anymore, right?
Growing up in Aiken, South Carolina.
Clearly, you could have used a whipping when you were young.
So your mother was an educator, is that what you said?
Both. My mother retired being a PE teacher.
Really?
And my father was the school principal And for years, I had to combat the idea that perhaps I was the valedictorian because he was the principal.
They thought he was fixing your grades.
Yes, yes.
So what does so before we talk professional journey and you walking us through that, what did you love about the Argentinian town that you grew up in with family? What when you look back, what are some of your fondest memories?
Very excellent question, because sometimes we, particularly those of us who become immigrants, I came to the United States in 1980, right after high school. And today, I'm turning 57, so it's almost
Happy
30.
birthday today?
Yes,
literally?
this very moment.
Happy birthday.
You
wow.
and Hank Aaron share a birthday. I don't know if you know that.
No, I did not know.
Yes.
But our very own Jennifer Foxworthy from the show here today, she has a birthday as well.
Is that right? Well, happy birthday.
Famous. But back to your question, Scott.
Yes.
What I loved about growing up in the little town of Paraná, Argentina, is that my father and mother lived as instructors, both in PE and in the administration, in what is called a rural high school. It's called Juan Alberdi, and that is where educators went to become rural teachers in Argentina. So when you were thinking about becoming a teacher in a country school, you had to be a little bit of a first aid, you had to be an engineer, you had to repair things in addition to taking care of the education. And it was a holistic approach to education, and that really, really made an impact in my life.
Sure, yeah.
Like the old one-room schoolhouses, right,
yes.
in the U.S.
Yes.
Interesting.
And also, it instilled a set of values. You took very little for granted. I was part of an instrument band, and I played the drum, and I think it was the same drum for all 6 years. We did not have fancy equipment, and you learn to appreciate things really from a very authentic point of view, which is the second element in my upbringing. First education, and then really a set of core values about who you are. And that's why I can't put the energy and the passion back in the bottle like the genie. This is who I am.
Well, so I imagine that really sets you up well for a successful business career. And the value of education and the value of appreciation. So let's talk about your professional journey.
Sure.
Give us the Reader's Digest version, say, from your first job to your current role.
Great. You can have passion, you can have a lot of energy, but I do believe you have to know your subject. So I have a degree in economics from a university in Chicago. Now it's called university. At the time, it was called North Park College. And my degree in education led me to have a job in the options and futures trading in Chicago. It was a boutique organization called Chicago Research and Trading. They went defunct. They were actually bought out by Bank of America and North Carolina National Bank. And so my first entry into the professional world was as a credit analyst. So I learned to measure risk from really the best minds in the industry. But I will tell you a story. I wanted to progress and make advances in my career badly that I will practice my title. Claudia, Sena, credit analyst. And that experience stayed with me because, again, never taking the opportunities for granted. As we have chances in the world to speak and to promote what we do, we really want to be able to remember where we come from.
Yes, so important. So especially in this day and age where authenticity and transparency and it is in demand across all aspects of consumers and business and global trade, it seems.
Yeah.
So now let's switch gears a little bit. I think there's so much we could spend several hours.
I know I could.
Yeah, talking about your personal journey, especially trading options, and that is way above my pay grade. I mean, probably the math you gotta know way above my pay grade. But let's switch gears. Let's talk about EALgreen.
Yeah. So when we were talking before the show, you said EALgreen is me, and I am EALgreen. So I'd love to understand that, but also help our listeners understand what EALgreen is, what you do, and how someone knows that you might be able to help them.
Wonderful. As we mentioned a moment ago about education being so important, EAL is a product of two entrepreneurs who decided that not if, but when they would become famous and successful, they would pay forward. They will give back the opportunity for somebody to go to college. So the way that I came to the United States, which is an entirely different chapter, as an immigrant, I was 18 years old. I was able to come as an exchange student. And the American family that hosted me at the end of the 6 months, of course, had to send me back. And I did. It was several months later that they decided to invite me to come back to be a student in college. And I entered Purdue University.
Purdue?
Yes.
I'm a
Boilermaker.
Boilermaker, wanted to become a doctor. But
Okay.
here was the story. I did not speak English well enough to be in college, let alone at Purdue, and let alone in pre-med program. And this family encouraged me to learn English, and they said, go to Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. That's our summer camp for the church, and that is where I met the entrepreneurs that founded EAL. And here was the story of EAL. EAL was founded as an idea ahead of its time, 40 years ago, to look at customer returns.
40 years ago?
Yes.
Wow.
40 years ago.
Okay.
We are almost 40 years ago. In a year's time, we
Wow.
will be celebrating our 40th year.
Wow.
And these two entrepreneurs took advantage of an opportunity in the tax code saying companies have an incentive to be good and to donate their surplus materials. And they came up with this very circular concept. If companies can donate the product that colleges and universities can use on their campus, we will trade the value of that product for a scholarship to benefit a student that is with financial need.
Wow. What a great idea that is.
And that is EAL. 40 years ago, we are here. 40 years later, most restaurants don't even survive 40 years.
Yeah.
It's true.
So our opportunity for creating scholarships for students is the pioneer concept.
Well, tell us more about the pioneer concept.
Correct. So what happened was that this company was started as more ideas happened to be a concept, a pipe dream. Most people don't even think it will be possible to do. They were able to engage the first donor. They engaged the first college. They needed the first student.
Huh.
And
So they had the funds. They had the source for the funds, right? They had a school that was willing to participate and just needed a student to
say, count me in,
I'll take
help
your money.
you. I will help you. I will help you launch this concept. And it is not money that we take. So that's a very interesting point.
Interesting.
We take products,
Okay.
only products.
Okay.
And I was chosen to become the first student to ever launch this concept.
Okay. So,
So how do you deploy it at the university?
Exactly.
So
It is a very interesting study, and the model is really a supply chain model where we work directly with operations. So the departments of facilities and operations, they manage like a small city. You have plumbing, you have landscape, you have HVAC equipment.
right.
And these folks are purchasing those products regularly through their suppliers and vendors. 50 colleges in the United States at this moment are willing to look at those products even if they have a scratch or a dent. So they get the product directly from us, and the savings that they generate become a savings for the college, which we then cross campus and we collaborate with the financial aid team,
Got it.
and they award the scholarships to students with the highest amount of need.
man.
So is it I mean, I don't want to get too detailed here, but is it a direct transfer from the operations organization? So they've got a budget, let's say, for $4,000 for a
Yes.
heating and air unit. They only spend $3,000 because it's got a scratch. Does that $1,000 go to the financial aid organization or some portion of that?
Yes, it's an internal transfer.
Wow.
It's a budget transfer from one department onto the university. And the numbers are actually almost the opposite. They will spend about $1,000 and they will save $3,000. Our average scholarship is $3,300.
Wow.
And this past year, we helped 907 students. We gave almost $3 million worth of financial aid. And that is the cusp of almost 40 years doing this. And so 18,336 students, plus Claudia, have received scholarships.
That is awesome. How have we not heard of such a thing before? Are you trying to proliferate this through other universities and...
Indeed. We believe that there are about 150 universities in the country that are a good alignment with us, that are a good model for us. Because if you're a very large university, let's say any of the Ivy Leagues, perhaps you like the EAL concept from a sustainability point of view. Mm-hmm. But you're really going to be well-funded, you have endowment, you have a number of different economics that come into making your need for buying something scratch or dented or receiving a donation less critical. But if you are a liberal arts college, or if you are particularly supply chain focused, if you are looking at STEM, if you're looking at community colleges, we have those institutions in our network, and they do not pay a membership fee. They just have to believe in the concept.
It's a beautiful thing. So you may have already shared, how many schools are kind of in this network thus far?
We have 50 colleges and universities.
Okay.
So 50, and we are in 18 states.
Okay. And so you've grown dramatically, and over 18,000 students have it's made an impact.
18,336.
I missed that.
Plus Claudia.
Exactly. Let's not forget that.
So why? What is the why? What is the... Because I don't want to make any assumptions.
Yeah.
I could probably pull an answer together based on what you've already shared. But why do this?
7 years ago, I lost 5 important people in my life through accidents, natural deaths, and tragic events. And it really made me question, Scott, the purpose of being in this country, the purpose of working and being very dedicated to what I do. And my mother said, I know that you want to come home to be with family. Please keep doing what you are doing. Keep loving what you love to do. And come and visit me often. And it was her support. Just that when almost 4 years prior, I said, I would like to go to the United States to learn to speak English. And she said, Claudia, I don't have any money, but you can have all my love. So I think love in family, and whether it's your child or your spouse or your partner, expand that to now in a corporate setting at a time when it's very difficult to express love. It's very uncomfortable in some cases. Do you shake a colleague's hand or do you give them a hug?
Right.
It is a very difficult time to express love.
That's true.
It is important to find the appropriate way to be, and I think that being authentic in who you are and being able to be just a little vulnerable in sharing what makes you extremely committed to doing something. So the why for me is that after 20 years of being leading EAL and being affiliated with EAL as a first student, I feel that this is truly now is my legacy. And I'll just give you a concept for the younger audience. I always tell my daughters, Erica and Victoria, who are beautiful young women at 28 years old, that when you're young and you are able, yes, twin girls, when you're young and you're fortunate to go to college, just like I loved it, economics and money and numbers, you get a job. In your middle career, you are able to have and call it a profession. But if you're fortunate to now begin to think about what impact I am having, then that becomes your legacy. And there are many thought leaders. Jack Ma, for example, in Alibaba, has a very similar take in his own connection to education.
Right. And a quick sidebar there, Greg, as we've talked about, while most folks know the big A, Alibaba has dwarfed them worldwide, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jack Ma is an inspiration. He is. He's a fascinating figure. But go ahead, please.
I was in Guangzhou last year, and speaking to an audience of 1,000 Chinese women, I had to find inspiration that was culturally appropriate. And I happened to have a fascinating colleague in the EAL office who is from the province of Wuhan, and our hearts and prayers are going to them right now. And I asked Shin, will a quote from Jack Ma be appropriate? Because sometimes culturally we need to be really thinking about that. And it was very appropriate that it really was a quote that he said that if you want to build a good business, go and find a great product, go find a great idea. But if you want to find your legacy and create a building that has impact, go and see how you are impacting both the downstream, so the environment, the society, and the upstream, which is the governance. Which leads me to one of the thoughts that you had earlier. Greg, what are the trends? What are some of the things that we are seeing? We cannot live in a world where we are thinking that it is the American way. And I say that with all due respect because I became a U.S. citizen. I had to study to pass all the exams. But it's this concept of really embracing a global view of our ecosystem as a society and our neighbors and in doing business across the world. It's interesting.
So I got to go back. So you're addressing an audience of 1,000 Chinese women and young ladies.
Yes.
What was the main thrust of your address?
It was the circular economy. And I was fascinated that the Chinese government invited me to speak about sustainability, social impact, entrepreneurship.
That is fascinating.
Yes. 67% of new businesses in China are headed by women entrepreneurs.
67%.
Of the new businesses, of the
love it.
The very small and medium enterprises, women are making a tremendous impact. They are creating extraordinarily creative business models, from how to recycle food to packaging to collaboration. There are 9 R's in this spectrum of sustainability, from recycling to reuse to redesigning.
I think I went through most of those on the front end.
Lots of reads, right?
Exactly. And so who are those leaders? Who are those entrepreneurs that can get a small loan and launch a business? So the concept was the circular economy and triple impact: society, governance, and environment.
All right. So continuing kind of where we went there towards the latter part, of what trends are out there that are really clearly no shortage of passion, and I love that. By the way, you need your own TV show because it comes across in your first impression, and there's so much the why. Everyone's why is different, right? And not to diminish anyone's why, but this is a very powerful why that clearly it's a lot like as Claudia was talking about her why, and with this backdrop of the Reverse Logistics Association, I instantly went to Tony Schroeder because he has got a powerful why, and he really believes in what he's doing. And it's not about money, but it's about changing the world. Yeah. And I get the same thing.
Your why is who you are, and vice versa, really.
We said a little bit, I'll tell you about how it was the serendipity of our encounter.
With Greg in the elevator.
Greg in the elevator. I'll finish that story because it ties exactly to this. Yesterday I wore a bright yellow dress, and Greg said, "Are you here for work or for
fun or gambling or something?"
Yeah, I said, "I'm here for work," and I think it was the yellow color, right? What I do when I go to conferences, this moment included the jacket, the pants, the blouse, not the scarf because it was a gift, but I wear clothes that I buy in the secondary market. I have all my wardrobe comes from a place called Clothes Mentor. This is a franchise where executive and business women go and sell their things. And then the Claudias of the world who run an EAL organization, who truly believe in this idea that, as I will try to get the name correctly, Steve Otan from Walmart this morning said, it is no longer take a product to its end of life, take a product to its new life. So when I told Erica and Victoria that I will be standing in China speaking about wearing secondhand clothes, they were like, "No, Mom, don't embarrass yourself. They're going to think that because you are in a nonprofit, you don't make any money. They're going to feel sorry for you." And I said, a quote from historians, that if not me, who? If not now, when?
Right.
So living that sense of authenticity, having the sense of an item, we are certainly making progress as women and executives, but not about the money that is in the sense of the old concept of success.
So I want to ask you something, and as we continue down this theme, kind of a mixture of your why and global trends. So we've got we have, for as long as we have been producing content, which goes back years to some of our earliest webinars, we're big proponents of sharing our platform with women and women leaders, and you know, because unfortunately we've got a challenge, especially in supply chain, right?
Yes.
We've got a full access series, which is sponsored by Capgemini, which we're really grateful for, to help put a spotlight on women leaders and make sure that your daughters and our daughters know and can see of what they can aspire to, right? We've been told by a lot of women leaders that's so important. If you had to give advice to women that are maybe they're in college or maybe they're in high school and they're contemplating their professional journey, and maybe they don't, let's face it, a lot of from what we've been told, and I think anyone struggles with confidence, right?
Sure.
But clearly, how can what advice from a confidence standpoint, from a how to get your feet wet and jump in and find your why in life? Speak to that a little bit.
It's an interesting question, and when I walked into this gorgeous meeting room yesterday, I was reminded of a couple of tricks and things that I have done and I have learned to develop that confidence. There was a time when I would walk in a room like this and I would be standing in the corner, afraid to talk to anybody.
We've all been there, probably.
Right?
Except Greg.
And I would not
Even
know.
me.
And I'm very pleased to tell you with humility that sometimes now I walk into these rooms and I am the person they want to meet. So how does one get to that journey? So a couple of things. First of all, there is a sense about taking yourself seriously from the point of view of working really hard. You can be invited to a conversation, but those that have sustaining power are the ones that really are contributing. So be really curious about what is it that you want to become and learn about that. So I learned to network. I got pulled from an elevator one time by my friend who said, next time I hear you telling your entire life story to a CEO, I'm going to hit the panic button in the elevator. You do not talk to a CEO telling them your entire life story. It's 3 seconds.
That's good. That's great feedback.
Yeah.
That's great feedback.
And my dear friend Stephanie, who is the author of that story in my life, it's a very successful woman. So second thing is study what you want to become and really know your subject and really become comfortable in a social setting. A couple of other things that were mentioned yesterday by Julia in our Women Luncheon, the value of mentors. And mentors across industries, across gender, across culture, not just the senior person in your organization. That's a different type of mentor. That's called an advocate. That's someone that is your champion. But you do need to have someone that you can go and just scream really loud when things don't go well, so that when you are showing up, you're confident and you have your ideas aligned with what you want to do. Because sometimes we only get a few minutes to make an impression.
That's right. And you got to have friends that will give you the frank feedback that Stephanie gave you.
Yes.
Right? All right. As much as I hate to start winding the interview down, and I'm glad that, these interview schedules and programs, they evolve like living things, and sometimes we can make late additions. This was a great late addition, Greg. So I'm glad that y'all had the elevator moment, and clearly elevators have played an important role in your.
They have. So Otis, where is Otis?
Yeah, that's right.
Don't they make elevators?
Yes,
Yeah. Here's a Otis commercial. That's
exactly.
Right.
So I have to tell you a little bit about this story from my perspective. So I got on the elevator. It was early in the morning, coming down here to get things set up. I was wearing a repurposed free T-shirt from a trade show that I had gotten. But I looked pretty ratty, and on walks this giant, as this lady is on the elevator, and I'm like, I have got to convince her that I'm not going to mug her and take her purse while I'm in the elevator. So I just made small talk, and what's the chance? But, it's interesting because the theme, sort of a unintentional theme of this show has been that personal interaction still exists today and is so important today. And I think that's important for our daughters' generations, if you've got as many daughters as I do, to to know is that interpersonal interaction is so important.
Yes.
And, it makes things like this happen. This is a fantastic story. I would have never met fellow Argentino. If we hadn't had that experience in the elevator. So, and this is such a fantastic story. This is enlightening. It's inspiring.
It's its own topic when it comes to like supply chain reverse logistics, but also there's some
beyond that, really, isn't it?
There's some universal elements to your story that I think anyone can benefit from. So we'll have to have you back on when we got a lot more time to dive in. And if you're ever in Atlanta, you have to come visit our studios.
I just have to do I am in the neighborhood. So
that's right. Do that.
Yes.
Do that.
Well, according to your the world is your neighborhood.
It
right?
is 31 countries I have
Yeah.
visited, although I haven't found an electric airplane yet. So
Not yet.
the
Yeah,
sustainability
that's
aspect of travel is becoming another issue. So.
Yes.
It's on its way, though.
Yes.
It is
Yeah.
on its way.
All right, so let's make sure our listeners can get in touch with you, reconnect with you, and EALgreen. So how can they find you?
The easiest way to find me is by texting or calling my cell phone number. And a lot of people don't want to do that, so I don't have a problem with telling you what that is.
Your pick.
Go for it.
So you can find me. I'm really active on LinkedIn. So it's Claudia at .Fried at LinkedIn, of course, you know.
Perfect.
People truly can give me a call at 630-670-3321. Or they can go to our website, www.ealgreen.org. We are a nonprofit, an NGO, so that is the classification for that. And I'm also on Twitter under donate, and then the number 2, sustain.
Love it.
Donate to sustain.
Love it. Great conversation. Really
Lovely.
have enjoyed. Appreciate as busy as you are here and you're keynoting tomorrow. Appreciate you carving out some time, and
Yeah,
we're going to
no
have you
doubt.
back on to kind of see how what goes on
Thank you.
throughout 2020 at EALgreen.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time and
You
to
bet.
your audience for paying attention and for being engaged. Thank
That's
you so
right.
much.
So sit tight for a second as we wrap up this episode, Claudia.
We're going to tell you where we're going to be.
That's right.
Okay.
So we like to invite our audience to come check us out in person, much like we just did here today.
Yep.
And Greg, we've got a slew of events coming up, including what's the next
We
one?
get to go back to Atlanta in March for Modex, modexshow.com. 35,000 of your most close friends in supply chain, right? And show is free March 9th through the 12th. And then on the 10th, March 10th, the Atlanta Supply Chain Awards, sponsored by Supply Chain Now and the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce, CSCMP, Atlanta Roundtable, and APICS Atlanta, and our friend Chris Barnes.
That's
right. We're
Modex
giving
is free
awards.
to, that's best thing about Modex is free to go to.
Yeah.
Free to network at.
Incredible.
Free to benchmark and share best practices and insights. Modexshow.com, as you mentioned, MODEX show.com. And then you were about Atlanta Supply Chain Awards?
.com. Atlanta Supply Chain
I like that.
Awards.com.
You're not wasting the syllable
No
today.
way, man. So we're still taking nominations for 10 more days. So we do have some really innovative nominations around company culture and sustainability and that sort of thing as well. So we'd encourage you to
Right. Absolutely.
nominate anyone that you know that's doing great things,
Wonderful.
or anyone out there. And then after that, we're off to
Michigan.
sunny Detroit.
That's right.
Yeah, Novi, Michigan. So we'll be at the AIAG, the Automotive Industry Action Group. Jim Legio, our good friend there from Charleston.
Good.
Okay, he's from Michigan, but we met him in Charleston. We'll be joining there.
Corporate
Thank you.
Responsibility
Corporate
Summit,
Yes.
April 28th to the 29th,
Yep.
CSR.
And then
the Atlanta Supply Chain Summit to follow June 9th. And then the day after that, June 10th, so June 9th is a public event, Supply
Yep.
Chain Summit, AIAG Supply Chain Summit. That following day, I believe the plan is to go to Wayne State University, as
That's
you
right.
mentioned in the last episode, and interact with some of their faculty and supply chain students. They evidently, from what we've been told, have a burgeoning supply chain program.
Excellent.
they're doing it's a great program. One of the schools from which I was rejected admission when I was
It's funny. I doubt that. But we'll have to check with our
we
engineer
can fact
today.
check. We'll fact check that with Malcolm. Yes.
And then finally, to close out the current calendar, we're working on a couple of things with some great partners. But AME Atlanta 2020 Lean Summit is coming back to Atlanta May 4th through the 7th. We'll be streaming live on the first day of that event with a bunch of folks that love manufacturing and they love continuous improvement. And it'll be a great event. And it's a precursor, as you've mentioned, to 2021 when AME is bringing their international conference to Atlanta, what we call Supply Chain City.
That's right.
Supply Chain City.
That's kind of a moniker for Atlanta. What we've been evangelists for.
Shamelessly self-promoting, you might say.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with that. And if you are in Thailand,
Yes.
April 24th,
Okay.
I will be leading a panel in the company of the Chief Sustainability Officer for Pepsi.
Oh, outstanding.
And Chief Development Officer for Dow in Thailand, in Asia, on the topic of sustainability. And that is part of the Global Summit of Women.
Outstanding.
Which is how women leaders learn from one another around the world.
Love it. So what we do, key takeaways episode from her experience. We may have to do it remote, but after that conference, let's reconnect. And we'd love to get your key takeaways. What an incredible opportunity it sounds like.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Is there anywhere else you're going to be in the next few months?
I will be participating. This is not really a conference, but we are honored to have been selected as a prestigious member of a technical panel by the Underwriter Laboratories. Every time you plug something in, you see UL label. Yeah. They have just created a panel on determining what constitutes a business model that qualifies as a circular economy model. And we are now panel members. So I will be in the Durham area, the Research Triangle, February 27th.
North Carolina. Love it.
So getting around.
Well, we're going to get reconnected with you. Really have enjoyed our time with you. Claudia Freed with EALgreen, where she serves as a CEO. Greg, what do we miss before we sign off here?
I don't know, but off camera, I'd like to ask this in front of my wife especially. Is it okay if I give you a hug?
Absolutely. No permission required, but I appreciate the fact that your wife is here. And it's about respect. That's what it is.
Yes.
We are Argentinians.
We're huggers.
Exactly. But
so, but really, this is an inspirational topic. I love what you've done. I love that you've come to another country to do it. It's really impressive. What you've done, and it's inspirational.
Agreed.
So. Thank you very much.
Agreed.
Thank you to the team for putting it all together and making us look fabulous and sound even better.
That's right.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So on that note, we're going to wrap up and then we're going to hug. But big thanks to our guests here today. Big thanks to our listeners for tuning in. To our audience, be sure to check out other upcoming events, past episodes. Replays of our interviews, other resources at supplychainnowradio.com. You can find our podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, is it? And
YouTube.
Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. On behalf of the entire team here, including Tony Sciarrotta, who is ringing in our ears as we speak.
Yes, he is, man. He is chatting it up.
Scott Luton, Greg White, the whole team. Stay tuned as we continue our live coverage of the Reverse Logistics Association Conference at Expo right here in Las Vegas, Nevada, the center of what universe, Greg?
The Reverse Logistics Supply Chain Universe.
Stay tuned. Thanks, everybody.